I'm joined right now by Simone Gisondi. She is a published author and focuses on the education of holistic cancer therapies and disease reversal and just natural health. And I'm so excited to welcome you on. Simone, how are you?
Morgan, thank you so much for having me on. I'm fantastic, and I really can't wait for our conversation.
Yeah, this is going to be really exciting. I've in the last several years of my life, I've really been focused on natural health and holistic approaches. I think once we know better, we do better in all facets of our life. And I think a lot of people are learning about this. And a big
Mhm.
focus is going to be talking about holistic cancer therapies. But I want to start this with tell me how and why you got into this line of work.
Well, when it comes to holistic health overall, I myself had my own, I would call it medical event and health scare back in 2011. I had a stroke. But my journey goes back much further. I got into health overall. So back in 2007, I wanted to teach people how to eat right. I was doing fitness shows. I really knew how to get the body composition down. And then, of course, the stroke came, which was in 2011. And shortly thereafter, my father actually was diagnosed with his first cancer. He had two.
Wow.
Luckily, he's doing amazing and thriving. So it kind of took me on this journey, and I had to expand on everything that I had learned from the initial, journey that I started with nutrition. I wanted to see what more is there out there in the realm of health that we could help others or ourselves to actually thrive, not just be healthy, but actually thrive. So that's been in a nutshell, that's been the journey.
Yeah. And so tell me, when you say you found some different ways to kind of help ourselves and help others, especially when it comes to our diet, what are some of those things that you found?
So when it comes to nutrition, I mean, the epicenter of health is really our gut. And I know that a lot of people out there speak of gut health, and it's actually so true. And if you look even in the way that we are actually when we are in utero, so during our development, it's actually the digestive system that is first to develop. So the digestive system, and as we know, there are many neurotransmitters that are actually made in the gut. So even our mental health depends so much on our digestive system. And therefore, what we put in the body, which are the raw elements and the raw materials that the body uses to put together tissues and organs and even organ systems and neurotransmitters and enzymes and hormones, that all comes from food and that all comes from the nutrients that we put in the body. So it's so, so important when we are deficient in the nutrients necessary, then we suffer. And without those nutrients, there can be no health. And this has been proven time and time again. So there's a lot of scientific backup to these claims. And a lot of the doctors in the holistic health space, and actually, in large part, even in the allopathic, doctors do recognize that we do have to eat in line with the end results that we want for our health, especially in the space of diabetes. Everybody knows that, what we put in our mouth, especially when it comes to our blood sugar levels, in large part determines whether that disease, type 2 diabetes, is going to come or not, and very easily reversible if we actually change the diet. So the diet is one of the foundational things to health, especially because, well, we eat every day. So what we put in our body will show up in the body and on the body. So
Wow.
absolutely nutrition is that important.
So, and when you look at nutrition, obviously, I've never believed in this one size, fits all for different people, but I am curious when it comes to diet and nutrition, is there proven specific things that we should all be consuming, or is it really based on genetics and the things that are in your body that you have to kind of cater your nutrition style to?
I think in large part, there are very large overarching factors that do apply to us all. So we do all have to have certain components and certain nutrients in the body. We definitely need minerals. So we need the micronutrients. We also need the macronutrients. So in large part, everybody needs those components as part of their diet. But then when we kind of drill down further, we have to optimize for what we are looking to optimize for. So, for a pregnant woman, she has to eat to optimize for the pregnancy and for the development of the baby. If you're looking to do a fitness competition or if you want to do anything in the health in the sports arena, you want to make sure you optimize for that. So you want to eat in line with what you want the end result to be, your desired outcome. If you want to reverse a disease, then you have to optimize for that. If you want to eliminate cancer, you have to eat to optimize for that. And it's very much intertwined with the lifestyle as well. As we know, sleep plays an important and absolutely huge role, as well as connecting to nature, having access to fresh air, having access to sunlight. The body converts that to vitamin D, which is in fact actually a hormone. So all of these factors actually play together. So overarchingly, yes, we do have many rules that apply to us all, but then when we drill down further, we have to optimize for our desired outcome wherever we are on our journey.
So let's start with the overarching. What are those kind of things that we all need and we should all be, because if somebody's listening to this and they want to start and they want to do
Mhm.
better, what are these first steps, especially when it comes to the diet, that they can start adding, they should start changing?
Absolutely, you need access to the macronutrients, which are fats, so clean fats. We're not talking about trans fats, none of the stuff that comes from, the deep fried stuff that we see in fast food restaurants, but definitely clean fats that we get from things like avocados and nuts. We also need clean proteins. So if you are a meat eater, absolutely make sure that it's organic and as clean as possible from fish, as well as of course, carbohydrates. And that's actually very tricky because a lot of people believe that you have to consume bread and you have to consume pastas and cereals. And in fact, a lot of the carbohydrates that we get actually come from vegetables. And a lot of the vegetables provide us not only with the carbohydrate content, but also with the fiber that we need so that we can actually be able to go to the bathroom and not have any of those digestive issues that play a role, as well as even fiber is very important for diabetes. Very, very important to be able to keep the blood sugar leveled. So those are the overarching ones now. So those are the macronutrients. Now the micronutrients, so micro meaning the smaller ones, would be the vitamins and minerals. A lot of people are very deficient in a lot of the minerals that we need, typically found in water when the water comes from a good, clean source. Magnesium is one of the most important nutrients that we have, and almost everybody's deficient. So that's something that absolutely needs to be supplemented. There are other ones. Zinc is a very important one. Of course, for those that are low in iron, then that's an important one. Selenium, I think, is highly overlooked and would be great for as an anti-cancer nutrient. So those are the things, and of course, hydration. I don't want to forget one of the most important one. It's so important that we're properly hydrated. We don't have to look at it only as consuming water because we have to be hydrated at cellular level. And oftentimes you see that a lot of people drink water and then they just go to the washroom and pee it right out. It's important when we drink it for our body to actually absorb it and for it to get into the cells. So when that's the case, then the body retains it. It actually takes it and puts it to good use. But a lot of times you see that people become edemic. So they actually have that water retention swelling kind of look. And they don't absorb it into the tissues or they just pee it out. So that's important. You have to have all the systems work optimally and running on all cylinders for us to actually experience true health.
Oh, wow. This is so much good information. And I just feel like you just gave us a wealth of knowledge and somewhere to really start, even just a basis. When you say
Mhm.
that we really need to make sure water on a cellular level is getting us, how can we make sure that's happening?
So a lot of hydration actually is much better received when we take it in through our food. So fruits, for example, especially juicy ones. So things like, of course, oranges or grapes, watermelons, apples, that hydration that's in the actual fruit comes into the cells when it comes in with the nutrients. And in fact, it has such great ratios of all those micronutrients that I was talking about earlier. So it has a lot of the vitamins and a lot of the minerals. So you're actually really feeding the cells because they do need access to all those nutrients, not only to be able to carry out their own functions, but also to be able to maintain their own health. So think of us. We have to be healthy to be able to go to and do our jobs. If we're sick, we have to stay home and rest. So the cells actually operate in the same way. They have to be able to be healthy for themselves, and then they have to be healthy to be able to carry out their functions, their jobs that they are obviously there to do. So for example, when we need to have very healthy lungs so that we can actually be able to get access to the oxygen to be able to breathe. When those cells are actually not healthy, so a lot of people who, let's say, smoke and do damage to their cells in their lungs, actually those cells start to die and then we lose function of that tissue. So it's important for us to give all the tissues what they need. So when it comes to hydration, it's so well received when it comes not just through regular water, especially because water is more a solvent than anything else. So it's important to get it from fruits and vegetables. So things like celery. Celery is a high water content. It has actually a lot of minerals. The most important salt is in found in celery and in cucumbers.
Okay. This is so interesting because I wish these are things that they really taught us in school so we could understand these fruits and
Yes.
vegetables and how they're helping us. And the way that you have just described in such a very basic but also important way is so cool. And I so appreciate that because I wish somebody would have broke that down for me when I was 16 years old and really shaping my diet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's important that we have these kind of, because these are for life, right? It's for the way that we experience life. We want to be able to enjoy health, to be able to enjoy other aspects of life. And foundationally, health is the number one thing that we can have. Because even if we get access to riches, if we're in a hospital bed fighting for our life, how are we gonna be able to enjoy, let's say, riches in the sense of monetary riches, millions of dollars? Would you be able to travel if you have to be in a hospital bed fighting for your life? Of course not. So foundationally, yes, it's important, and it's important to start early, especially during developmental stages. So as children, when our tissues and our organs and our systems develop, it's so important that we set those stages and we set the habits at that point, because those are the things that we're going to do throughout life. And it is then that we are going to be able to enjoy the health that we foundationally build on as time passes. So, yes, it would be so wonderful if we could get these things early on in childhood and taught in school.
Yeah, wow. Now I do want to, I have one of my friends on in this episode. Her name's Tori, and she had a blood cancer. And there's kind of two aspects I want to talk to you about with this. But when you talk
Mhm.
about things that cancer patients, when you're helping them holistically,
Mhm.
what are the ways that you're doing that? You mentioned diet, and we can kind of break that down a little bit, but is there other ways too? So that's kind of the overarching.
Absolutely. So the way that I approach it, and this is the way that I approached it even with my father, is nutritional detoxification. So what that means is we want to give the body an opportunity to detoxify. So we want to be able to get rid as much of the toxic load that we accumulate through life, and that's from lifestyle, of course, as well as poor dietary habits. A lot of times, and much like what you just said, we don't know that some of the things that we consume are actually detrimental to health. And we take for granted that our body is able to actually sustain so many offenses over time. And we never know when that time comes to an end and we get that diagnosis. So nutritional detoxification means that you take in certain foods that allows your body to cleanse and to detoxify, but also be taking in nutrients to be able to support the tissue so that they have access to some of the fuel and what they need to be able to continue to function and fight for you. So that's the number one thing. And of course, detoxification also kind of bleeds into the lifestyle aspect because we don't want to take in extra toxins. And I'm talking about from even, let's say, cleaning products that we use in our house, because what we do is we inhale the vapors from some of the cleaning products. We get it on our skin and we absorb it into the body. It also disrupts a lot of our hormones, and it also takes it takes a lot for the body to try to mitigate that while it's also trying to address the cancer. So, foundationally, through the diet, I do a lot of nutritional detoxification. But again, I also sort of weave that in with lifestyle. And I also, speaking of the diet aspect, I believe that it's important to give the body and especially the digestive system a break from constantly sifting through the nutrients that we take in and being able to sort of get them to the proper tissues. So, oftentimes, what I do. And of course, it's very different depending on I try to meet the patient where they're at what stage they are, whether it's a first cancer, secondary cancer, a lot of fasting. So I'm actually going to have a conversation with Dr. Walter Longos, who is coming out of, I believe, a university in California, and he's just released a second book. And I know that he did a lot of research on the idea of fasting. So he's the one who actually developed the fasting mimicking diet so that you can give your digestive system what it needs, a break to be able to sort of get itself at that level of health so that it can actually fight the cancer, be able to allocate the necessary things where they need to be so that we can fight the cancer. And of course, the immune system does a lot of that work, but it works in concert with other tissues and other systems, right? So that we can actually give the body as much of a fighting chance to be able to come on the other side healthy. And ideally, you would be able to approach it only from a holistic perspective. But I've worked with a lot of people, and even my dad actually went and sought help in the allopathic community. So he did a lot of therapies in the traditional way, so chemotherapy and radiation. And then we want to be able to also give the body a fighting chance because a lot of those traditional therapies actually kill indiscriminately. So they kill the cancer cells, but they also kill the healthy cells. So we want to make sure that we keep those in as strong a state as possible. And that's why nutrition is so important. You want to give them those nutrients that helps them become stronger and be able to continue fighting through the cancer journey.
Wow, it's so cool just how much our body takes on for us
Oh, yes.
and it fights for us as well, but we're
Absolutely.
putting it through the ringer all the time, and I don't know that we truly appreciate all that it does for us,
No.
day to day life, especially as I hear you talking about that. And it's anyone I imagine who has fought cancer or been with someone fighting cancer, you want to take that pain away. And it sounds like one of those things you can do to really help in that is help them with their diet in a way that, you're giving them. Everybody always wants to send food when somebody goes through something. So
Hmm.
maybe we send food that is very nutritionally helpful for them, and that would also be a good benefit. So I just love that you're sharing all of this and the science behind all of it. So you had also mentioned environmental, which it's so big right now.
Absolutely.
Everybody's very much paying attention to what they're consuming, what's around them. But
Hmm.
environmentally, in just a average household, what are the things we should be paying attention to that could be causing cancer or diseases in us that we just may not even realize?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. So we have to make sure, first of all, and I know that there's a lot of people out there talking about mold toxicity. So we want to make sure that our environment, our living environment, is obviously clean. So that's one thing. Candles, especially scented candles or any of the scented products that people like, those plugins and things of that nature, we just inhale all that toxicity, and our body has to mitigate all of that. So if you have an active cancer, irrespective of what organ it's in or where it's located, the body is obviously sending all the immune cells to be able to fight this. And then imagine if now the body also has to mitigate the damage that this is doing to you. And oftentimes, what happens with cancer patients is that they approach. So let's talk about, let's say, those people that do the traditional therapies, like my father did, like I was telling you. So chemotherapy, radiation, or even surgery. But in the meantime, their lifestyle remains the same. So they look at it as this particular therapy is going to get rid of the cancer, but they do the very things that has actually brought the cancer to begin with. So it's
Mm.
so, so important, even if you do go down the path of doing traditional therapies, that you really take into account and do an inventory of what was I doing to get me here. It was such a great wake up call.
Yeah.
And now I have such an amazing opportunity to be able to take a look and be able to make the changes that are going to give me such an amazing fighting chance to be able to overcome this. So, absolutely, the lifestyle in the home. So, as I mentioned earlier, the cleaning supplies. So, a lot of people use a lot of cleaning things that are actually so detrimental to health and very toxic. So, the candles or anything scented for that matter, as well as personal products. So, the things that we use that we put on our skin. So, the skin is actually what holds things from going inside the body. It's our protective mechanism, it's the largest organ. However, we have to look at what do we put on it that we give it. It's a doorway to the internal environment, and that if the cancer's on the inside, do we want to bring in extra toxicity that the body now has to also mitigate, in addition to the poor air quality that we inhale every day, which we don't have much control over, as well as some of the things that we have in the household, and a lot of like off-gassing things from, let's say, furniture or carpets, things of that nature, even in cars. So, even in our personal vehicles, when you buy a new car, that new car smell is so toxic.
Mm.
Also, the clothes that we wear, a lot of them are actually like those ones that are supposed to withstand fire, are actually coated with something that is so toxic. So, things like that. And of course, even in an environment that you go to, is important not to sort of expose yourself to the things. You have to take ownership of your health and not put yourself in environments that are actually going to be detrimental to you.
Now, I know I can hear all of those things. And as someone who has been actively really trying to focus on the products that I'm buying, the things that I'm bringing into my home, even changing pots and pans and only using glass
Absolutely.
and stainless steel, it's overwhelming
It
because
is.
when you look at all of it and you see the financial aspect of it, there's just so many steps that happen
Hmm.
with this that can be
Hmm.
very overwhelming. So when we're looking at products, like let's focus on cleaning products and personal products and
Hmm.
things of that nature. When you're seeing things like unscented and they're organic, is that the kind of words you're looking for, or is there something else we should be paying attention to?
Yes. And for example, so for reproductive cancers, especially for us women, bleached tampons. And I've posted a whole bunch of stuff on socials about how detrimental some of these products are for women. So tampons that are made with bleached cotton, the chemicals that they use to bleach are and the so the vaginal area, which is a mucosa, as well as the cervix, of course, are highly, highly absorbent. So anything you insert in that area is actually going to be absorbed and it enters into your bloodstream very quickly. So it's so important that you do look for exactly what you said, organic, and you have to. I know it's a lot of work, of course. You have to trust the source, you have to trust the company, you have to trust the brand. So do your homework, especially if you have, let's say, a history of abnormal cells, or if you have a history of cervical cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer in your family. So that is a weak spot for you. Absolutely do your research to see what am I using for myself and what can I do to make sure that I reduce the risk of that happening to me, especially in the world we have out there today. And the same applies to what you said about plastics and eating out of only glass and metal and even the cookware that we use. Do your research and make sure that you see that they are actually sustainable, that they are a company and a brand that is really invested in providing not only value, not only quality, but they do actually value health and they do want to give people things that are going to be healthy. And that goes across the board, even for cleaning products. I'm a big fan of things that are made with essential oils, like cleaning supplies. Or you could just go down to the basics. Good old fashioned white vinegar does a great job of cleaning and it's not toxic.
Yeah. So is there any brands, because I imagine that your house, you've really done a lot of research and stuff. Is there any brands you really love that are like your favorites and you kind of really trust?
To be honest, what I try to do is I actually try to make my own. So I love Thieves, and that's a brand that comes from Young Living. So that's an essential oils thing. But I do mix a lot of my stuff, and even for my personal care stuff, I make my own toothpaste. I only use coconut oil for my skin when I come out of the shower. I kind of make oils and I mix them for my face. And think of it like this: if what you're going to put into your body is going to, or what you're going to put on the skin ends up inside the body, you want to be able to even eat that stuff. So, for example, what I put on my face is a lot of black seed oil. And that's actually also something that I take for maintenance of health and as a preventative. So I put that on my skin, and I don't ever feel the need to go and spend exorbitant amounts of money on these brands that are, they put a lot of their stuff in plastic. I have glass jars that I use for myself. I make my own cleaning products. So, like I said, a lot of white vinegar, a lot of lemon. If you want to keep bugs away, I use a lot of things, essential oils like peppermint. They also don't like cinnamon. So a lot of these natural things, and of course, health is an investment. I recognize the price point because a lot of people tend to go and buy something because it's very cost effective. But if you're going to be saving monetarily but paying with your health, you have to really stop and wonder whether it's actually worth that exchange of keeping the money but giving your health. And oftentimes, a lot of people, especially after you've lost your health, people would be willing to spend anything to be able to capture it again. So it's important that you work from it from a preventive point. So invest in those little things. Sometimes with time, you have to invest with time and sometimes with money, but you get to keep the most important, the most valuable, the most important thing that we have, and that's our health.
Gosh, you've given us so much good information. I just feel like you are this wealth of knowledge that I just want to
Thank
carry
you.
with me everywhere to be like, okay, what do I do next? This is so
Thank you.
important because it is
Yeah, it
to
is.
your
It,
point,
it
like
is
health is
important.
so important. It is
Most
one of
important.
one of the most important things we will ever spend money on or focus on is our
Hmm.
health because we can't have anything else without it. So what you're doing is
Absolutely.
amazing. So thank you for all of that. I do want to also recognize you being a published author. Is there a lot of the things that we talked about is that in this book that people can read and they can find?
Yes, I did talk about my approaches and how I changed my lifestyle. What some of the things that I did, a lot of mindset. I did a lot of meditation. I had to kind of come to terms with some of the things that I was carrying, like grudges and things like that. You really have to be at peace. I do strongly believe that I think disease and illnesses are very multi-layered. A lot of times they have to do, let's say, in large part with the diet that we consume, but that's also tied to our self-worth because oftentimes we don't believe that we are worth to invest money in, let's say, good quality food. Therefore, a lot of the stuff that's very psycho-spiritual and very emotional has a huge role to play in health, as well as in lifestyle. So if we skimp on some of the things that are so important, then, it kind of shows up in how our health shows up. So, yes, in the book, I talk about mindset. I talk about the diet that I had to change. I talk about the lifestyle. So, how I went and I kind of had to take a closer look to what I was doing. I was a type A personality, very driven in the gym. I was counting every calorie. I had to kind of scale that back and be able to just say, am I at peace? Or do
Mhm.
I have to constantly chase something that's always ahead of me out there instead of being at peace inside? So I was constantly sort of very outwards focused rather than inwards focused. So, yes, I do talk about that in the book.
Oh, I love that. And can you tell everybody what it's called, where they can find it? I want to make sure
Oh,
they know that.
yes, of course. So the book is very aptly named Against Medical Advice. And that's actually a line that was said by one of the medical people when I was in the hospital right after the stroke. So it's basically a journey of how I took ownership of my health against medical advice, and I was empowered to really study to see what can I do. And to be honest, I actually only studied what I could do for myself at that time. And then I kind of recognized, because through the studies we get to see just like I said earlier on, that there are overarching rules and principles that apply to everybody. And yes, so the book is called Against Medical Advice, and it's available on all platforms. And of course, you could find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, depending on where you are in the world, but it's definitely in all marketplaces and Amazon.
Oh, amazing. I'm glad you shared that because I'm gonna be buying it. I need
Thank you.
I mean, I'm already on the journey, but I need to continue on the journey. And sometimes you just need a little help. I do want to ask you two kind of hot topic questions. They can be quick answers or however you want to go about it. But the first
Hmm.
one being we always see all kinds of studies. There's
Hmm.
the studies of drink a glass of wine, it's good for your health, or don't drink alcohol, that's bad for your health, or this much, or drink this kind. There's everything out there.
Hmm.
What's the situation with alcohol?
So alcohol, and of course, as you remember back in the day, and of course, my father, his primary cancer was lung cancer. So back in the day, way back in the day, doctors used to say that you should smoke. And of course, then we kind of came to see that that was not really such great advice. And I know that in the evolution of health, and of course, the more studies we do and the more we're able to actually even look at the the figures that we see show up in large populations. So now it's actually, and Dr. Daniel Amen, who is one of the most important figures in mental health, and he's the one that does a lot of the brain scans. He speaks at large. So no alcohol is actually safe. And it's tied not only to obesity, but a lot of cancers, a lot of mental health issues, a lot of neurodegenerative diseases. So I would not recommend, especially like when you look at it from what the nutritionist in me will look at it and say, what are some of the nutrients that show up in alcohol? And there isn't that much, especially like when it comes to cancer, it's a lot of sugar, zero nutrients. And if you were to look at the nitty-gritty, especially now, there are a lot of additives, especially red wines are highly colored. There's sulfites, there's tannins, there's just so much that is of no value to the body that the body would actually have to mitigate. It really beats up the liver, it really beats up the brain. And you're not taking in anything that the body can actually say, "Ooh, that's really going to help me." Like, absolutely in no way, shape, or form. So I always look at it through that lens. If it's not going to be of help, and of course, in the health arena, we all say like you either feed health or you feed disease. So everything that you put into the body is going to feed one of those.
Mm,
So which
wow.
one does alcohol feed?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's always hindsight. The hindsight is always 2020. When you're looking back, you're
Oh,
like, oh,
yes.
now I see that. Now I feel that. But, we're 30 years down the road and this is where we are. So the other question I had for you was everybody kind of has different diets. I myself am a vegetarian. I'm a huge lover of animals. That just kind of happened when I was 8 years old and I stuck with it.
Amazing.
So that's mine. I know I have friends that are vegan. I have friends that are keto. I have,
Hmm.
the gamut of diets. Is there any diets that we really shouldn't be doing, or is like we have so many diet trends? Like, how do
Yes.
we know what is actually beneficial to us versus not? And should we just all be focused on eating healthy for our bodies more than anything?
Absolutely. So that's super important what you just said. Eat for what your body actually likes. And if you are attuned, your body is always giving you feedback. So if you see that you constantly, so let's say you start doing the carnivore diet and you're constantly constipated, well, that's your body telling you, hey, what you're doing is actually, I'm not liking it. It doesn't feel good for me. And of course, yes, we go through trends when it comes to diets. A lot of people do really well on keto. Luckily, keto is actually, and in large part, that's because it doesn't increase, like it keeps the blood sugar low. And a lot of the diseases that we see are out there are as a result of the high sugar content in food. And there's sugar in everything, which is why it's important that we eat the food that Mother Nature made. So if you're going to be eating meat, eat meat, not alongside two, let's say, buns and mixing it with a lot of other things like relish and ketchup, both of which have a lot of sugar to begin with. Sugar should never go with meat. So you have to optimize for what feels really good for you. So the keto diet you could actually do without eating any kind of meat. You could actually, because it's high fat, right? So if you do a lot of, let's say, avocados and nuts and seeds, you could get really good, healthy fats from many different sources. And you can also do protein from many different sources. But I'm not a big fan of fad diets as an overarching thing. I'm a big believer that the body needs 90 nutrients and you have to get those nutrients in. If you're going to be doing a specific diet and that diet's going to give you those nutrients, sure, your body's going to be happy. All of your organs and all of your systems are going to get what they need to be able to function, to be able to continue being healthy. So, if that works for you, fantastic. But by and large, diets typically are trends because they cannot be sustained for long periods of time. And a lot of people will see that some of the diets that they go on will show in their, let's say, blood test results. You see that you're deficient in certain things, which are so important. Like a lot of people are deficient in B12. That's actually so important. You have no energy. A lot of people become deficient in other nutrients. And then you start to see it show up as illnesses, sickness, disease, inability to perform in the gym or to be able to get by, or you don't have any energy. So optimize for what actually works for your body rather than try to adopt a diet in the name of I'm going to be skinny, I'm going to look good. It's never, and I've gone down that path. I remember one of the shows that I did, one of the fitness shows, I looked amazing, fantastic. And a lot of people were asking me, are you doing a show? Because I did look good, but I did not feel good. I was not
Mm.
happy. My hormones were all over the place. I wasn't menstruating. So it was like I was a mess, but I looked good. So
Which
if
is
you have
never
to
a
pay
fun
that
place to
price,
be.
never, ever, 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 never, ever give up your health in the name of looks, ever.
Mm. Wow. Well, Simone, I could sit here and ask you a million questions because I'm so fascinated just by
Yes,
you and everything that you've done and our health because it's, again, just something that we lack a lot of education and resources on. And I
we
wish that
do.
wasn't the case.
We
So
do.
thank you for your work. Thank you for being part of the solution and working all of that. And, everybody go check out her book. And Simone, just thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it.
Morgan, thank you so much for the opportunity. And absolutely, I'm so happy to be able to share the knowledge that I have, especially when it comes to one of the most important things that we have, which is our health. So thank you.